Hello! For all our wine lovers
and book lovers,
this is
Wine Sisters Book Club. Well, here we are doing a fun and first ever surprise episode.
Surprise and delight, baby!
Oh, it is Friday and she's ready to go.
Woo! We have just had quite the day where it's been a lot of hours spent together.
We started a virtual winemaker dinner for a wonderful group of people in Norway at 10 a.m. Pacific time and ended at 2 p.m. Pacific time. So
yeah,
we've been looking at each other all morning, and here we go, about to give you a surprise episode, looking into each other's eyes once more.
We can't be stopped. And we also showed up to this winemaker dinner in like the same outfit, which is just hilarious.
And what's infuriating is that it's Nikki's fault.
It's subtle foreshadowing.
I dropped my daughter off at her house this morning in my outfit. She was not dressed yet. And she comes to my house wearing the same thing I'm wearing, hair curled like my hair. Wonder where she got that idea.
Well, to be perfectly honest, I was going to do my hair like this anyways. Second of all, I honestly, like when I was getting dressed, I was like, ooh, I'm going to put on the gray cashmere sweater. And I bet it's because like my subconscious saw you and like liked the way your outfit looked this morning. And like I wasn't thinking about the fact that we were going to be spending most of the day together at the time.
Little sister energy just wants to be me. I mean,
sometimes you just got to be your big sister.
Well, you're welcome for the inspiration your entire life.
Yeah. Well,
and you look good, obviously.
You're welcome for the inspiration of reading fantasy novels. So
thank you. That is fair. And thank you for that. Genuinely. I'll look into your eyes. Thank you. So fantasy. That's what we're doing. And we decided on our little surprise and delight episodes, we're not going to do too much other than really dive into the book.
Yeah.
This is book talk.
We're going straight in. And it's because we sort of did like the weird, silly thing of picking a third book in a series as our March book of the month, which is Onyx Storm is our book of March. And that is the third book in a series. But it happens to be a series that's like highly anticipated, super popular, like one of the record-breaking book releases of like the last 15 years, like crazy press.
Is that true?
Yes. Onyx Storm. I keep getting confused. Onyx Storm was like a huge publishing record. Yeah. Lots of records were made. So that's why we chose the book, because we both like it, but also because it's like sweeping the world.
And we are going to sweep your world with our recap of the first two books of the series.
Yeah, so we figured you either have read them or you haven't. You either want to read them or you don't, but you could always just listen to this episode if you don't want to read them, and we'll give you a little bit of a recap and you can jump into the third. We don't recommend that path. We recommend going 1 through 3. Hopefully you start with 1 and 2 and then you come to this podcast and then you read 3 and then you come to our next podcast.
And that's how you count to 3. 1, 2, 3.
With podcast breaks in the middle.
And we hope you start with 1 and then you move to 2 and then you get to 3.
But if you really want to skip 2, it honestly could be recommended.
Yeah, so we'll get to that. But I highly recommend you read number 1, which is Fourth Wing. And for me, this book was really my introduction to fantasy. So maybe that has something to do with why I'm so obsessed with it. But it, to me, and Nikki, tell me what you think, it reminds me of like the Hunger Games meets Harry Potter meets steamy romance novel that kind of keeps you on the edge of your seat.
Yeah, I think it's got like action, it's got romance, it's got like some creativity around worlds that are not your everyday, which I think brings people in. Like, I love a fantasy novel because it takes you out of like your everyday. It's like something that is so not real that it doesn't like you. It gets something really bad can happen in a fantasy book and you're not like torn up about it. Whereas like if you read about like a missing child or something like that, like you're like crying and sobbing and like in tears, like freaking out. But because that could possibly happen to your child. Whereas like fantasy is like, can't happen.
Yeah, I cannot read. I can't even watch things anymore where something happens to kids.
Yeah.
So that's a whole other topic. But yeah, I think that is what's fun. What I really loved about this, and I will say it welcomed me into the fantasy world. I have not left the fantasy world ever since this book. And matter of fact, I have become one with the fantasy world.
I am a fantasy world.
I am Faye. No, I'm kidding. And if you don't know what that means, time to welcome the world. So, and there's no Fae in this book, but in mini fantasy, there are.
There are.
So I think what I really do love about it, though, is that Fourth Wing really at its core is based around a romance. And it, for me, as someone who really enjoys romance books, thought this had so much more going on. You know, it wasn't just a fluffy little summer fling romance book.
Yeah.
It has, like you said, action and a war college and dragons and
political intrigue. Like there's depth to the characters. It's not just like a rom-com.
Exactly. So there's so much more to like keep you interested other than the romance plot line, but you get it all. So anyways, I really loved it. I'm going to give you a little bit of a description of the book and a recap so we can all remember what happened. And then we'll talk a little bit about it.
Yeah.
When I'm done, we'll do the same thing for Iron Flame.
And we did, Aly picked a wine that reminds her of Fourth Wing. It's a blind tasting. I picked a wine that reminds me of Iron Flame, which is the second book in the series. So we are going to do our fun blind tasting in a little bit of a different way because we're both pairing it with a different book. But wine will be involved as always. And we're enjoying some Riva Ranch Chardonnay because, you know, Riva is our girl.
I had to get a little bit of that sound. I hope you enjoyed it. But yeah, we are drinking. As we said, we're better when we have a glass of wine for you. So this story really centers around Violet Sorrengail. And she is the daughter of a war college general and a scribe. Her father's the scribe, and her mother is this war college general who's a very intense woman. And her father passed away when she was younger. So she grew up really following in her dad's footsteps. She was very studious. She loved the archives, like she loved to be in the library. She was very knowledgeable. But after her father passed away, her mother really pushed all of her children to enter the war college. The
War college.
Yeah, war college quadrant. Writer's quadrant is what they call it.
Yes.
Thank you. I was looking into Nikki's eyes. She couldn't tell. So basically this war college puts these cadets, and those are all the first years, through a series of challenges, essentially to test out like how strong they are. And most of them are strong in the traditional ways you would think of. Big, muscular, fast. A lot of them have been training for it their entire lives because it's something they really want. And it's really normal in this war college because there are different trials essentially every day to test their strength for students to not make it to the next day. Every day opens at this war college with them reading off essentially the scroll, the list of college students who passed away the day before. So at one point in the book, each cadet, each first year is tasked to pair with a dragon, to bond with a dragon. And through this bond is really where their magic will develop to show what kind of quote unquote powers, they call it signet. Mm-hmm. You listen to audio. Signet develops. And so they have no idea what type of power they have, how strong they'll be until they found a dragon to pair with. Not all cadets bond with a dragon. So Violet ends up protecting this smaller golden dragon in the threshing is what it's called. And by doing that and kind of risking her life, and by the way, Violet is not big, strong, athletic. She is frail. She has bad knees, like weak bones.
Yeah, she has some sort of genetic disability that like causes a lot of issues, like makes her super flexible. There is a name for this this disability. I don't remember what it is, but like really flexible joints, but they're weak and
Really
like weak bones, like low body mass. Like it's just she's small and frail, essentially.
Small and frail. And so I think she ends up pairing with the largest, most powerful black dragon, Taryn.
Yeah.
Taryn. Again, fantasy books have all these strange names, and you have to pretend like you know exactly how they sound, which we don't.
Yeah.
Niki does. She listens to most of the books, so I look at her to make sure I'm right. But Taryn essentially bonds with her for protecting this dragon and risking her life, but also the cunning smarts that she has in order to kind of outsmart the bigger, stronger warriors and win battles. And so that all happens. There's so many more stories here. So essentially,
And she also, sorry, not to jump in,
No, please.
she bonds with Taryn, but she also bonds with Andarna, who
Thank
is
you.
the small dragon that she defends. So it's very unusual, highly unusual, like never happened before to bond with two.
exactly. So the fact that she bonded with two, first of all, has never really happened. She becomes an anomaly. It kind of shocks everybody. And she doesn't know what it means, but she knows that she can talk to multiple dragons.
Right. And also, like, everyone just expected her to die, basically.
Yes. Everybody.
And now she's bonded with two dragons. And there's people that hate her because
Of her mother.
not only because of her mother and the rebellion, and her mother was like in charge of basically sentencing a lot of people to death. And so all of those children are at the war college. And so a lot of those children hate her.
Yeah.
But on top of that, people who aren't part of the rebellion descendants hate her too. Like people just hate her for some reason.
I think people hate her because they look at her and see that she's weak and frail and shouldn't be there and think that she's only there because of her mother.
Right.
And then her mother has a hard reputation. She is pretty much like a cutthroat person. And so that's what Niki just mentioned, the rebellion. So that's the other part of this whole story. And that centers around Xaden Riorson, who is the son of Fen Riorson, who was sort of the leader of this rebellion.
Right.
And the rebellion was really kind of like rebelled against the
King Tari and like the way things are.
Yeah, the way things are. And all these students, by the way, are going to the war college to essentially defend their borders. They have wards surrounding certain cities that protect them from venin and wyvern and other things.
But they didn't know about the venin.
Right, they didn't know that. They don't. You end up finding all these things
Now we're getting
out.
confusing.
We're getting confusing. But there's wards essentially that protect their cities in certain areas of the continent. I don't know what they call it. That's why they're all there. So the rebellion had a problem with this whole concept and thought that all cities should be protected. Now, no one really knew why. All these parents were killed and all of their children were forced to go into the war college, and they were all marked. So they all kind of got like a tattoo or something that signaled them as a child of one of the rebels. So as Violet enters, she's terrified of Xaden because she thinks Xaden will try and kill her because of the relationship Xaden has with her mother for essentially executing her father. And it is this essentially Xaden takes responsibility. He's the oldest of all of the rebellion children. He takes responsibility for essentially all of these kids. And it's this interesting pull and push between Violet trying to master her signet, which turns into she's a lightning wielder, and which becomes, again, another anomaly. She is the strongest, essentially.
Yeah, the strongest signet for the weakest person, and everyone's just like, what the hell is happening? But It takes forever for her to wield. Like, there's just a lot of – the book is super long.
Yeah.
But I think that it's very engaging, and, like, between the, like, tension between her and Xaden that turns into, like, the fine line between love and hate and
love that.
Yeah.
Love that. Love
like,
hate.
I wouldn't say it's, like, quite enemies to lovers because, like, I don't know that they were ever really enemies. Like, it's almost like adversaries to lovers.
They're like no trust between them, but then Xaden does small things throughout the whole book that makes Violet think like, wait, why would he be doing this if he wanted to kill me?
Right.
You know, but she's constantly afraid of him. Like the fear doesn't go away for a long time, I don't think.
And so like basically Aly mentioned venom, but like by the end of the book, we are gifted with the understanding of what the rebellion really stood for, that they were actually fighting venom, who are magic wielders that take all of the like magic from the earth rather than taking it directly from a magical source like a dragon. The dragons give you the magic. If you take it from the earth, you literally strip the earth dry of all the magic, and then it turns into like a gray, desolate wasteland. So these venom are really bad people, and what the rebellion was trying to do is protect the world from the venom. And the King Tari, who is the king that rules right now, didn't want to protect everyone. He just wanted to protect his citizens. And where Xaden's family came from, they were so close to the border, they felt for their neighbors who weren't part of their kingdom and wanted to help.
So there's special weapons that can essentially protect people better from these venom. And Xaden and some of the quote-unquote marked ones, so the other children of the rebellions, started to secretly in the night orchestrate how they were moving supplies to support those cities outside the wards so that they had better protection against the venom. So essentially kind of starting a small rebellion
in
themselves.
In their own way. Yeah. And so, anyways, like, I think we've, like, detailed the book enough, you know, and we can talk a little bit about what we thought about the book.
Yeah.
Right?
Yes.
Because I rated this book a 4. Like 4 out of 5 stars. I thought it was like an absolutely solid read. Absolutely would recommend. Most of the books that I like a lot are rated 4s. I only give the 5s to like knock your socks off for me. And reading is so personal because I know so many people. I remember I gave my I do like a book review post on my Instagram every year because I read so much. And I posted like, oh, these were my favorite books of the year in fantasy genre. And I didn't put Fourth Wing in there because I didn't give it 5 stars and I only put my 5-star reads. And I had like 20 people that year email or message me on Instagram saying like, what about Fourth Wing? Did you try Fourth Wing? And I'm like, oh yeah, I really liked it, but it wasn't like a 5-star read for me. And I'm trying to like remember why. And usually 5-star reads for me are the ones that I like cannot put down. And I remember like I could set it down and like go to work and not think about it at all day. And I know that that's not the case for like Aly.
No, I was obsessed. I loved it. And I think I kind of told you guys a little bit about why I loved it. And I gave it a 5. And it was my favorite book of the year. So favorite that I probably read it 5 times, maybe 6. Yeah. I don't know. It gives me a certain feeling. I love it. I'd go read it again today, honestly. And I think it's because I love a good romance story. It was my first introduction to fantasy. I loved Harry Potter growing up. So like the whole dragon experience I really liked. And I thought it was a version of fantasy that's easy to understand from a dragon. Okay, we've all watched movies or potentially read a book, Harry Potter, with dragons. The powers and the way they came on were somewhat straightforward and easy to understand, so it wasn't polarizing to me. I loved the story the love story. So yeah, I really, really loved it and thought it was very entertaining.
Yeah. I thought it was really good. Like I liked the love story a lot. I thought that there was a lot of like intrigue and I liked the political aspect of it. I liked the end. Like I liked how they tied it up and left you on a cliffhanger because it makes you want book 2.
She's big on cliffhangers.
Yeah.
Rebecca Yarros.
Oh yeah, she is. But I think cliffhangers are great, especially in a series, especially if they want you to read the second book. Because if you don't put a cliffhanger and I have to and I read it on release, I need the cliffhanger in order to continue to want to read the series.
That's true.
Because like I remember for a different series, A Court of Thorns and Roses, the 3rd book, to me, I was like, why are they doing another one? They just ended the series and there was no cliffhanger. It's just over. Like I was like, this is perfect. It wrapped it up, tied in a nice bow. I don't want another book.
Right.
I don't want this to continue. And it's not that I loved that. That was my favorite series. Like Aly's Fourth Wing, mine was A Court of Thorns and Roses. But like at a certain point I'm like, I'm done. Like you made a good series. Don't mess it up with more.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense. And I think that I actually felt a little less inspired by book number 2.
Yeah, absolutely. Book number 2 was not written well.
Let Nikki tell you exactly what she thinks.
No, like it's like the writing style changed, and like I saw like some people guessing that like AI was used or something like that.
That's so true. I forgot about all that.
And I actually don't doubt it. Like there was some like really strange things, and like maybe they used like an AI editor or something, but like there was some really strange things in the way that it was written that I was like, this doesn't sound normal at all. But
I think for number 2, and I know you're going to pull up your notes and tell everyone about it, it continued the story of Xaden and Violet and all the different cast of characters that are their friends.
Yeah.
But it almost got lost in all this like crazy world building and political madness.
Right.
That, like she lost the core, I think, of what made Fourth Wing so good in my mind.
Right. Yeah. So like when you look at a fantasy book, like there's
a fanny book.
There's like 4 different types of fantasies. You can have like a magical realism, which is like basically regular every day, but like you open a door and it leads you to another dimension. You know, it's like very much a normal everyday life. And then you have like a whimsical fantasy that is like very much like hoity-toity fairy, like I don't know how to, like cutesy almost. And then you have romantasy, which I would say this book is totally romantasy. And then you have high fantasy. So Fourth Wing was totally romantasy, like through and through. The plot in a romantasy book is the romance.
Yeah.
And like there are subplots that are like the political intrigue, like everything else that's happening, but the romance is the plot. And then high fantasy is where like romance can be a subplot, but the plot is the plot. Like it's like about whatever the book is trying to accomplish. Fourth Wing, romantasy. And then it feels like Iron Flame, she was trying to move from romantasy to more of like the high fantasy, but still the romantasy was like the reason that people came, and it got convoluted and confusing because the world building was so crazy.
And one thing I hate about some fantasy series and books and writers is that they use unnatural names for the towns, for the types of people or groups, for the kings, for the main characters, for the dragons, you know, and then you have to remember, and we talked about this, you have to remember all the people's special power. It's there is a lot of information you have to try to absorb. Okay, tell us about Iron Flame.
Okay, so in Iron Flame, we basically start out in Eurasia, which is where the second rebellion, so to speak, is being held. And that's where the book ends. Book 1 ends. So book 2 starts in Eurasia, and then they go back to the War College, Basgiath. And the only reason I know how to pronounce these names is literally from listening to the audiobooks. Like
Thank God for that, because I have no idea.
You really wouldn't know unless you listen. Like the way that they're spelled, you don't spell them out to sound them out. It's like crazy.
It is not phonetic, so good luck.
It's not phonetic. And so everyone that was in that last scene of the Fourth Wing book that we didn't allude to, but if you read it, you'll get it. When they found out about the venin, they ended up in Eurasia. They go back to Basgiath, and now they all have this secret that they're holding, including Violet, who was gravely injured in the last scene of Fourth Wing and was healed at Eurasia. So when they go back to the War College, they now have this secret, and they're trying to figure out how to power ward stones to try and protect people outside of the wards of Basgiath.
There's also something we forgot. Question. I raised my hand. There's also something we forgot to tell you. She was almost killed. Violet was almost killed. They were all set up to die at the end of Fourth Wing.
Right.
So that's also part of the secret, is when they get back, they were set up by like
Colonel
Atos, who we didn't talk about Dane, but it was her best friend growing up and is in the War College, and there's sort of a weird love triangle happening there. But
her best friend Dane's dad.
Her best friend's Dane's dad tried to kill all of them, Xaden, her included, for the rebellious things they were doing. So when they come back, essentially a lot of the like people in charge knew that they were supposed to die. So then there's this other awkward tension.
Right. So yeah, they're like, oh, you guys are back. And so they figured out they are back, and now they're trying to figure out how to power ward stones. So they're doing all this stuff undercover, trying to figure it out. And they find that they need 2 books from the king's supply. And this is a whole new year. So now Violet is a second year in the War College rather than a first year. And that means that you get a whole slew of new characters. So you have all the first years that come in. And the way that once you have a dragon, they set you up into squads, basically. So you have like a team, like a partnership. And they are like the wing. So she's on fourth wing, which is, of course, that's the name of the book. And so they get new first years that go onto their wing. So you have these new characters that are coming in. And one of them happens to be the king's son. And he ran away from home and crossed into the War College, which is like this little task you have to do. And
changed his name so no one knew he was the king's son, which I also don't understand how nobody would recognize his face, but that's another.
Well, but Violet knows him.
Violet does know him.
So, because her mom has been
working for the king.
Yeah, working for the king for many years. So Violet knows him and is like, oh my God, and brings him onto her wing. So now he's on her wing and he helps her get into the king's library to steal these journals so that they can learn more about ward stones. And so when they're doing that though, Violet's captured and they take her into the cellar and they torture her. And they're really just trying to get out like what she's doing and why she's in there. And they bring Dane in, which was her best friend from childhood, sort of a love triangle with Xaden, and
a goody two shoes
through and through. And he is like tasked. He has this secret ability that basically, if he touches you, he can read your memories. And so he is tasked to like find out what happened to her and why she's doing this, why she's stealing books. And he finds out. He tells on her. But then, because he just learned the truth, and he's a goody two-shoes, in his core, he's a good person. So he realizes, like, everything he's been fighting for is actually the wrong side, and he kills Violet's capturer and helps them escape. Everyone then escapes to Erasia after – well, not everyone. A big chunk of the War College goes to Erasia with their dragons because Terran, Violet's dragon, transmits the memory of what happened with the venom to every dragon in his what do they call it? The Empyrean.
Yeah.
So now every dragon and every rider has now seen the venom, the attack that Xaden, Violet, and that whole group were set up to die. Like everyone now knows. And so I think it was a little bit more than 50% of the dragons and riders decide they're out of here and they go to Erasia to try and help everyone. And at Erasia, they are met by the other people that they had been fighting for all these years to defend their wards and their property line. That's not it.
Yeah, the borders.
The borders.
Yeah.
And
outposts.
And so now they are like kind of partnering with the enemy but it's not really their enemy because they're all fighting for the same thing. And so there's like there's a
cultural, like they've been raised to hate these people and
right.
not like them. And then they realize that, oh gosh, these people have been fending for themselves this whole time.
Right. And so all that to say is more new characters. So you get an influx of so many new characters in this book. And I think that's one of the reasons it makes it hard to follow because it's just like pouring more and more new people in. Yeah. Anyways, so now at Erasia, they're all learning there. They like start up classes again because these, if you can remember, these kids are all like basically at a war college. They're young.
They're sophomores. They're like freshmen and sophomores of war colleges. And I guess there's third years there too, but whatever.
Right.
You can think of how young we were.
Yeah. Young kids learning about battle, basically. So they start up school again at Erasia and continue to learn. And then after learning a lot, they figure out how to power the ward stones, which is great. But then they hear that Basgiath is going to be attacked. And they need reinforcements because they won't stand if the Venom get in and are able to attack it.
No people there.
They have no one there, and their wards are failing. And they've just learned how to power the ward stones. So they go back.
And by the way, the ward stones and the wards is what keeps the Venom out.
Right.
I think if you've read the book, you obviously understand that. If you haven't read the book.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. And so they go back to help at the War College Basgiath, and then all of this stuff, craziness happens, but at the end of the book,
major battle
at the end of the book, the only way that Xaden could save everyone was to turn Venom because he had burnt him and his dragon drive magic, and he needed more power to hold them off while they were trying to power the ward stone there to save everyone.
And Violet's mother also dies.
Yeah.
And then you kind of learn in that moment that she was doing what she thought was best to protect her kids and try to kind of she really wasn't as bad as she seemed.
Right.
I think it's what you got out of it was that she really was trying to do something, but in her own way.
Right. And so I don't know if we really explained it in a way that tells you exactly how the book went, but what we are trying to say is the first book was definitely romance driven, and this one was definitely more plot world building driven, politics, and it definitely made it more confusing because typically in a fantasy series the world building is mostly finished by book 1, and it felt like most of the world building in this series was done in book 2 and even some in book 3, and we haven't even got to book 3 yet because that'll be our next one podcast. But a lot of different
book 3 also has some confusing elements,
right?
But again, don't want this to deter you from reading it because it was good, but
it's entertaining. Yeah. I would say I did not like this book because I read it, I consumed it. I didn't like it because I thought that Violet, who in the first book I thought she was really great, in the second book she was so insecure, so annoying, constantly bickering with Xaden the whole time. It made the romance not fun for me, and she was not an admirable character. When you're reading a book, especially a series about the same people that she's the main point of view, you are reading her perspective.
Yeah.
You don't want to hate the main character. And I really struggle whenever I'm reading a book where I don't like the main character.
Well, yeah, because she's in this book mad at Xaden for essentially lying to her about what he was doing with the right. That's the whole plot line, that they keep going back and forth with each other on how mad they are, how she can't trust him, can't be with him because he
didn't tell her something that he couldn't tell her because it's not his secret.
And guess what? The moment that he told you, Dane touches you and finds out everything, and he knew Xaden weirdly. So normally if you have Dane's abilities to read minds, the leadership will kill you because it's too much of a risk to them. They are keeping secrets, obviously. They don't want people who are intrinsic, is what it's called. And Xaden knew that Dane had this power somehow.
It's because it's a memory, so it's technically not – if you can read people's current minds, they will kill you immediately.
No, but I think they would have killed him if he wasn't Dane Ados. If he wasn't the Colonel Ados' son.
But there's people that have intrinsic abilities, Imogen is another one who is a side character. That's the other piece of this book that I didn't love. She really doesn't give side characters justice, but she expects you to remember them.
And so you have to remember their powers. You have to remember their dragon name. You have to remember everything.
Right. So it's just so much. The reader has a lot of expectations going into this. Take it with a grain of salt. You can always look up characters if you forgot what they do. There are so many people that write about this book because it is a popular book, popular series. But Imogen has an intrinsic power where she is able to remove your most recent memories. So there's a lot of intrinsics. It's just there, and there's also people that can predict the future.
Right. That's true. But I feel like I remember something about them saying that Danes had to be kept really secret.
They all do. If you have an intrinsic ability, you get a patch and no one can know what you're not supposed to tell people what your ability is.
Yeah, exactly. So I think the other thing that happens in book 2 is Kat is introduced. So there's a new woman character who is Xaden's ex-fiance, basically ex-betrothed. They were sort of they were sort of betrothed because I guess, Xaden comes from somewhat of a royalty-ish line himself. Yeah. So that part also for me was so, I don't know. I'm just when I'm so excited about a couple, I don't want anything to mess with it. So I don't appreciate some other girl coming into the picture. I'm get out of here. See, we don't have room for you.
And I actually like it because if you they got together in the first book, you know what I'm saying? So if you're just going to be in happy marriage land for the next 5 books, Where's the
you
strife?
want a dose of reality in there?
Yeah, like, well, that's not even fun anymore because they're just so solid in their love. Like,
But they weren't. They weren't solid at all. They were hating each other, not trusting each other. I guess they needed something else to fight about.
Well, no, Xaden was solid. Like, Xaden was solid. He loved her.
He is solid.
He is solid. Got rock solid abs.
Yes, zaddy.
No, but he would, like, in this book, it was literally Violet was annoying. Xaden was normal.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, I do think she was overreacting, and she was definitely more annoying.
Can you pour me a little bit of that zaddy wine?
Zaddy wine, here you go. What does it remind you of? Okay, wow.
Not sure yet.
Okay, so I'm pouring Nikki her wine to taste. I don't have any room, and sorry I didn't really give you much, but you can taste that. Yeah, I think for me that I gave the book 3.5 stars because Iron Flame, because, and it probably would have been a 3 because I just didn't, I wasn't in love with the story that much. It was a really long book, and like Nikki said, the world building and all the details you had to remember and the complexities, it just wasn't as exciting to me as the Fourth Wing book, because I loved the love story and the dragons and like all of it. So, and I thought it was Hunger Gamesy, where everyone's sort of trying to survive, and I don't know, I kind of liked all of that. So I gave it a 3.5 because I still was very hungry for more from this series. So I was excited to read it. At the end of the day, I did like still their story, even if she was a little bit annoying, and I'm still read the next book, and we liked it enough to put it as our third, like that book in our lineup.
Month book.
Thank you. Weird. Third month, third book.
Third month, third book.
Okay, would you rate it?
I rated it 3 stars. I rated it 3 stars because I still thought it was entertaining, but I really was disappointed with the story. I just thought it dragged on. I didn't like Violet at all, and
the Jack Barlow stuff.
Yeah, like they brought Jack Barlow back to life, and we didn't even talk about him in the first book, but he was one of the adversaries in the first book where he like just hated her for no reason. He wasn't part of the rebellion.
Tried to kill her from day one.
Yeah.
Like when she crossed the parapet.
Parapet. Yeah.
Parapet.
He was just like a naughty boy.
But not a zaddy.
Not a zaddy.
Not naughty in that way.
He was just a naughty.
I'm dead. I'm dead.
But when I give a book a three stars, like I'll still read the next one in a series. I've even read the next book in a series when I've given the book before 2 stars.
What?
Like it sort of just depends on the series and what my reading log looks like. Like if I have time and I have the book is available at the library or on Kindle Unlimited, I'll read it. But and like with this one, it's like such a worldwide phenomena. Like this book is like crazy popular. And if this is the first you're hearing of it, like you're under the rock that I usually live under. We share that space, but this is not the space today. You are above the rock now.
You do not live under rocks. You know about all books and all things.
In the reading world, I'm usually not under a rock, but in the rest of the world, I'm under.
Because you're just reading all the time. And you know how to spell anything, so you don't.
Just because I'm reading doesn't mean I know how to spell.
Okay, what do you think the wine is? And then, should I pour myself? Do you want to pour me? Should I just like die of thirst? What do you want to happen over here? This is a weird looking cork you're pulling out.
It's a Cal Poly cork. I was trying to be keep my anonymity.
Oh my god, you guys! I thought I was going to be a cheater, and I saw the top. It said Cal Poly, and I was like, oh my god, she brought me a Cal Poly wine.
Oh, is that why you said I was cheating?
Yeah, that's why I was like, okay, cool, don't play the game.
I was just trying to keep you.
I'm gonna need a minute.
Oh,
okay. What do you think? I just smelt the microphone instead of the wine glass on accident. Just want everyone to know that.
We are losing our minds. Okay, so I think that mine is like dark fruit, velvety. I'm having a hard time. So I think that it is.
If you get it, I'll be impressed.
I think it's. I'm between a Merlot and a Cabernet, and I know that seems weird, but it tastes like the tannins are so soft. There's something really like soft and supple, which is making me lean Merlot. But it could be a Cabernet.
Just pick one for Christ's sake.
I'm gonna go Merlot. I think it's the Myriad as well, Merlot.
Wrong.
What is it?
It is the Wente Vineyards Duetto, because it is dark, inky, delicious Cabernet, but it is about a love story, and that is the Duetto, baby.
That's so funny. So it was a Cabernet.
It was a Cab.
And the reason I picked Myriad as well Merlot is because Myriad as well Merlot is like a very dark and big expression of Merlot, and like not a normal expression of Merlot, and I also think it's like velvety. Like the Myriad as well Merlot reminds me of Zayden just in general.
I feel completely confused about what my wine is. Like, it has an interesting aroma that I cannot put a pinpoint on. See, even Nikki looks stumped if she was blind tasting this. So I'm thinking it's a blend, because I think there is some things happening in this glass. Maybe not. Is it? I don't know. I'm going to go Mount Diablo Highlands Red Blend.
That's it. What? You got it.
I am the queen.
So when I picked this wine, I was thinking like Iron Flame, Fire, and then Mount Diablo, which is Mountain of the Devil.
Mountain of the Devil, Jesus.
So red blend for Iron Flame. It has a lot of fresh acidity, which I'm like, ooh, acid. I didn't like this book.
Oh my God. Honestly, I'm just so impressed with myself. I am going to give myself a treat later for this.
You know we have toddlers when we're offering ourselves treat for a good job.
I did a good job, yeah.
Deserve
Maybe I'll give
treat.
myself a sticker. Yeah. Well, this was super fun. Again, I think you could honestly listen to this. Like, we gave some spoilers away, but not like all the details. It'd be impossible to cover all the details in one podcast without having like a 2-hour-long podcast, and that would just be obnoxious. So I still think, even if, I gave it 3.5, you gave it 3 on the second book, I think it's still worth it. Read the books. It's a good series. Read the first book at a minimum.
Yeah. And to be perfectly honest, the third book I liked more than the second book.
Me
so
too.
not as much as Fourth Wing still, but I think I still gave it 4 stars. So
4 stars for me too.
Don't let our review of the second book deter you. This is a really great series.
It is. Well, cheers, Nix. This was fun.
Cheers.
Love ya.
Love ya.